Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, and as we conclude our five-part series entitled 5 Things That Couples Are Likely to Differ, today we will focus on the 5th component of what couples are likely to differ about, and that is the topic of intimacy. Intimacy is defined as a person's ability to be close to another individual. Intimacy is also defined as the ability to belong, the ability to become familiar, and the ability to be close and inseparable with another individual, especially in a marriage. So when we look at intimacy and the working definition, it is not uncommon for couples to have two varying philosophies of what intimacy is supposed to look like in a marriage. Everything that connects to intimacy moves forth from the heart of each individual spouse. What then are the components of each heart that will either contribute to or diminish from an ongoing relationship of intimacy within the marriage? Intimacy has the components such as sharing, understanding, and commitment that are not equally important in building a viable and a powerful intimate relationship. So when we look at the components of sharing, understanding, and commitment, they are supposed to be equally distributed within the relationship. But the reality is, because you're dealing with two different people coming from two different histories, the history of distribution, the understanding of distribution, and what that is supposed to be like regarding how do I share? How do I understand myself? How does the other person understand me? What is my level of commitment in terms of your separate history from the spouse's history? That's where intimacy, when it comes into the relationship, really is seen and defined and honestly acted out quite differently. Intimacy is more than sometimes couples think it is. Intimacy is more than some things that couples have been taught that it is before they become a couple. Sometimes couples appear in church or other spiritual settings to present as being intimately connected one to the other. If this is the understanding either spouse has accepted as intimacy, their relationship will be honestly a superficially conceived definition of we are intimate. Now, let me go back and expand on this just for a few seconds. Sometimes people put on the persona, the public persona of intimacy, and their definition is, I have a husband or I have a wife that goes to church. So intimacy can be defined by that couple's skewed and shallow definition that as long as my spouse is willing to show up in a public way and sit by me or participate in a superficial manner in what appears to be service to God, then I have an intimate relationship. But intimacy is more than just the public appearance. Intimacy is more than just physical sexual intimacy. Physical sexual intimacy being unmet is going to manifest itself at some point in the relationship. So just because there is a physical sexual gratification does not mean there is intimacy at a global level within the relationship. Intimacy that does not come from the heart is really not a healthy intimacy in the relationship. Intimacy that does not give security and affirmation is not real healthy intimacy in the relationship. So just having someone in your space, and some couples have concluded as long as he is around, as long as she is around, I will define that as intimacy. Some people will conclude as long as he is around and as long as he says good morning or she says good morning to me, that is meeting my emotional intimate need. But intimacy is much more than superficial intimacy. Whether it's a public show of religion or whether it's a physical sexual contact. I mean, the reality is prostitutes provide sexual gratification, but that has nothing to do with true intimacy. Somebody can speak to you on an elevator, and that has nothing to do with true intimacy. A person can provide you security by having a security guard in the place that you live, but that is not intimate security. In the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse number 2, the Apostle Paul talks about intimacy, and he uses a term, have. And have is an intimate order coming from heaven. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. Now, when you look at the things we've already talked about regarding intimacy, what it is and what it is not, let's take a close look at 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse number 2. And the one word, have, it literally means to possess in one's mind. So let a man or let a woman possess in their mind the other spouse. It has to be a fixed picture, a fixed knowing that I'm going to be gratified cognitively. I've got to conclude that this person is going to be my intimacy. It also means to wear as a garment. Let a person have, let the man have, let the woman have his own spouse. That means I'm going to be clothed in this individual. I'm going to make sure that my shame is covered by this person. But it is supposed to be a reciprocal covering. If it's just one person clothed in the other, and the other person not equally is clothed in that other spouse, then that is not intimacy. It also means to regard with the highest regard. Each person is supposed to regard with the utmost esteem their spouse. And that's where intimacy takes off in the relationship. But if it's a using relationship, then it's going to be void of intimacy. And then that word have means to be closely connected to in a healthy manner. Adam was connected to Eve. Eve was connected to Adam because God put them together in a helping, complementary relationship. And when we can possess, wear, regard with the highest, and be closely connected, that's when intimacy and the differences of intimacy becomes less and less present in terms of we disagree, and more present in terms of we're becoming more understanding toward one another and the intimate needs within the relationship. I will see you back in class again next time. Don't be late and don't skip class.